Feeding the world by 2050. How can we accomplish this? According to conventional and industrial farming methods, the only way to feed the world by 2050 is to corrupt our immune systems and destroy our environment. Why should we, the people of the United States, continue down a road of not only environmental destruction, but also damage to the human body if there are other options? Up until 50 years ago, we relied solely on organic farming methods to grow our crops and feed our nation, methods which were sustainable and efficient. Our environment was not blasted with harmful chemicals, and the land was not destroyed with heavy machinery. Commercial farming uses pesticides that pollute our planet, pesticides which contain chemicals that contaminate our food by leaving remnants which can cause long-term health issues. Yes, conventional and industrial farming techniques have increased yields further than we ever imagined, but there have been costs, poisons leaking into our water supply, our soil, and our children's bodies. Continuing with these unsustainable methods will lead the world into a downward spiral filled with barren oceans, millions of disease-ridden people, and a poisoned environment. If we are striving to keep our planet and feed the ever-growing population by 2050, we need to look to sustainability. Therefore, conventional and transgenic, or GMO agriculture methods are not the answer. Organic agriculture not only creates a greater biodiversity than conventional and industrial methods, but organic foods are proven to taste better and contain more nutrients. Organic food is not only better for humans, but also for the planet. So I say this to you all one last time. We must return to only using organic agriculture techniques because simply it is our only option. We have dug ourselves into a deep hole with conventional and GMO agriculture, and now we need to begin to use the sustainable alternative to turn our world back around before it is too late. Organic is the only answer.
First question from conventional.
According to Park Wild from Tufts University and the USDA, the average conventional farmer can feed 155 people worldwide. How many people can one certified organic farmer feed, and how does that compare to conventional?
Although we do not have the numbers for how many people organic farms can feed, we do know while it does take So while conventional yields are proven to be higher than organic yields, this is due to the synthetic fertilizers and pesticides you use on your crops.
According to the Daily Mail reporter in 2012, organic farms produce half the yield of conventional farms, but require twice the amount of land.
Regardless of pesticides. Okay. Next question.
Okay, you claim that when you buy organic products, you're getting the best of the best. But if this is true, then why are some organics labeled 95% or 70% organic? According to USDA standards in 2013, unless clearly labeled 100% organic, they only require 95% of the ingredients to be organic. Obviously, this doesn't apply to apples or oranges because you can't have a 95% organic apple, but it does apply to foods such as pasta sauce. The other 5% of the ingredients could come from synthetic or genetically modified foods, which is what you are attempting to say is so bad. How do you stand on the obviously prominent labeling issue in your industry?
So, organic farmers are required to label their crops and their food products that they put out on the market, while GMOs, with no apparent or no official list of health risks, are not required to label their crops. That is because the FDA is filled with people, the very same people that work for Monsanto. This is from Organic Foods at Princeton.
Okay, so you claim that GMOs are having a hard time labeling things, which I know is true. But your labeling system is obviously something isn't working because a lot of people don't know that unless they're buying 100% organic, their food isn't actually pure organic. And with this in mind, So many Americans are oblivious to the fact that there are 4 essential different types of labeling that you could incur for organic. And yeah, sorry.
Okay, next question.
Environmentalists, as many organic farmers call themselves, should care about efficiency. According to the Washington Post and CNN, organic farming methods produce 25% less produce than conventional. If producing more output from lower resource cost is beneficial to the environment, and is a main point of environmentalism, how do you defend the way you produce food, given that your yield and turnover rates are smaller and slower than that of conventional farming?
First off, organic farming does generally use 20 to 30% more land, but this percentage depends on the crop being grown, according to Linus in 2013. Even with these different ratios, the slightly larger amount of land used by organic farms is not nearly as bad as the methods for which conventional farming uses to take care of their land in the first place, according to Foley, 2013. While conventional farming methods rely on heavy machinery, synthetic pesticides, and monoculture, organic farming methods rely on human labor, conservation tillage, and crop rotation, according to FoodSmart in 2009. Although organic farming does use more land, the methods used to take care of that land and the surrounding environment are way more eco-friendly, making the land fertile for the next crop, one important aspect of sustainability. Conventional systems tend to have a decline in soil productivity due to wind and water erosion of exposed topsoil, soil compaction, loss of soil's organic matter, water holding capacity, and biological activity, according to Leaf, 2013.
Organic agricultural methods may not always produce the highest yields, but it will always produce the healthiest food in a way that's healthy to our earth. According to Natural News in 2012, it is true that farmers converting to organic production often encounter lower yields in the first few years, but as the soil and surrounding biodiversity recover from years of assault with chemicals, it may take several seasons for the soil to come back from the assault from the chemicals, but eventually the organic yields will get ahead and benefit our health and our environment.
Brian Walsh from a 2012 issue of Time magazine quotes, "Conventional farming gets more crop output per square foot of cultivated land than organic, which means less territory needs to be converted from wilderness to farmland. Since a third of our planet is already used for agriculture, destroying forests and other wild habitats along the way, anything that could help us produce more food on less land would seem to be good for the environment. Although you guys point out that you do use more conservation techniques for agriculture, destroying more wilderness, which already does the natural cycles of the earth, seems to be worse than using less, even with conventional techniques."
Point.
Okay.
Transgenic.
Organic farming. You claim that organic foods are more nutritious and taste better than foods grown conventionally or through GMOs. However, in a study at Cambridge University in 2009, a panel of 40 to 60 consumers were given a blind taste test with organic and conventional foods. Of the foods they tried, most preferred both the same and couldn't distinguish between the organic foods and conventional foods. People preferred mangoes and orange juice that was grown conventionally, as opposed to organically. Knowing this, how can you say that organic products are better tasting and more nutritious than conventionally grown or transgenic food? And if they aren't, then why should people spend more money on them for that very reason?
They should spend more money on them because they're not infused with pesticides.
Organic fruits and vegetables contain about 12% more disease-fighting nutrients than non-organic foods, so even if they taste better, even if they don't taste better, they're better for you. And in the long run, that's what's going to affect our world and the sustainability that we're going to be able to use. Because if we're going to feed the world in 2050, then we'll have to have a sustainable method for producing the food. And in my opinion, I don't think flavor comes before health. And so if you're saying that in a taste test, conventional food, GMO food was more delicious, then that's not going to help like the developing countries that need food more than like benefited taste buds.
And although the tastes are the same, the land used to make the organic produce is healthier than the land for genetically modified organisms, genetically modified agriculture. And this is according to Princeton Organic Foods, 2013.
Well, while we did mainly focus on the flavor of organic foods
Princeton
in
Organic
that
Foods,
question,
2013.
many people claim also that organic foods are more nutritious.
Organic foods.
And a lot of people believe that. However, that is very misleading and untrue.
Organic foods are more
Many people
nutritious.
buy organic food in the hopes
And
of getting
a lot
better
of people
nutritional
believe
value.
that. However, that
But
is
the
very
Stanford study,
misleading
there
and
was a
untrue.
study at Stanford in
Many
2012.
people buy organic food in the hopes of getting better nutritional value, but the
Okay,
Stanford
next
study,
question.
there was a study at Stanford in 2012 that
A report done in 2013. Some organic farmers use neem oil and various plant-based pesticides to protect their plants.
According to
Neem oil, although natural, has been used as a contraceptive.
some organic farmers use
Neem
neem
is
oil
used
and
to
various
prevent
plant-based
pregnancy, which means it has serious effects on the human body.
Neem oil,
Do you use
although
any
natural,
forms of
has
natural
been used as a
pesticides such as
contraceptive.
neem oil?
The Natural Organic Program is in charge of creating the list of allowed pesticides. When looking at this list, one will see that there are some synthetic materials that meet
the
regulations.
Natural Organic
With that
Program
being
is in charge
said,
of
these
creating
synthetic
the list
chemicals
of
are
allowed
few,
pesticides.
and the NOP
When looking
clearly
at this
states,
list, one will see
and I
that there
quote,
are some
in
synthetic
accordance with the
materials that
restrictions
meet
specified in
regulations.
this section,
With
the
that
following
being said,
synthetic
these synthetic
substances
chemicals
may
are
be
few,
used in
and the
organic
NOP
crop
clearly
production,
states,
provided
and I
that the
quote,
use
in
of
accordance
each
with the restrictions
substance
specified in this
does
section,
not
the
contribute
following
to the
synthetic
contamination of crops,
substances
soil,
may be
or
used
water.
in organic crop production, provided that the use of
These
each
pesticides have been
substance
proven to linger in the
does not
environment.
contribute
Organic
to the
farmers do not
contamination
always
of
realize
crops,
their
soil,
effect
or
of these
water.
substances, as noted in the article by Bob Goldberg in
These
2005
pesticides have
titled
been
"The
proven to linger in the environment. Organic farmers do not always realize their effect of these substances, as noted in the article by Bob Goldberg in 2005 titled "Free Farming."
According to the environmentalists Miller and Schoolman, in 2011, only 800 million people were suffering from hunger and malnutrition, and that number would jump to 1.3 billion people suffering by simply changing to only using organic farming methods. That was in 2011, but according to the World Food Program, as of 2012, 842 million people are suffering from hunger and malnutrition, and numbers are rising with the population.
But according to the World
If we were to
Food
attempt to
Program, as of
supply the
2012,
world food demand by using
842
organic
million
farming
people are suffering
practices,
from
it would
hunger
simply
and
not work.
malnutrition,
So
and
what do you
numbers are
think
rising
would
with the
work
population.
about
If we
switching
were
to
to
complete
attempt to
organic farming?
supply the world
Well,
food demand by
along with the
using organic
malnutrition
farming
rate that is
practices,
rising,
it
we
would
also
simply not
have
work. So what do you
skyrocketing
think would
obesity
work
rates
about
rising
switching to complete
in
organic
our
farming?
society. And we do, if we proportion our food, we do have enough to feed a large fraction of the a large amount of the population. So, by changing to organic methods, although this may slightly reduce crop yields, smaller amounts of food could encourage proportion regulation among the people of the world. And this is according to Organic Valley 2011.
Well, unfortunately, we can't support just a large population. It's got to be the entire world population. People are going to end up suffering if we were to switch all of our agriculture to organic. I do support smaller organic farms, but in order to feed the world, we are going to need something else. According to Jeff Gilman, in 2009, if organic farms were to increase in size, they would actually do more environmental damage than conventional farms do. This is because of the use of natural pesticides, which require more doses to become effective.
Okay, that was our last question for this round. Will the conventional team please step up and share with us what you think are your benefits?
In a world of 7 billion and growing, we are in dire need of finding a solution to end world hunger through advanced agriculture. The only way to solve this problem is through conventional farming. The most prominent reason why conventional farming is the best way to fix this problem is because it has the highest crop yields of any type of farming. according to Palmer in 2012. It is ridiculous to believe that small organic farms would be able to meet the needs of 7 billion people. Likewise, genetically modified foods pose too much of a risk by lowering genetic variability. Also, contrary to popular belief, conventionally farmed foods are no less nutritional than organic farmed foods, according to a study by Stanford University in 2012. Some conventional foods even have been proven to have higher nutritional value. According to a study in Medical News Today 2012, conventionally farmed strawberries have higher amounts of potassium and phosphorus than organically farmed strawberries. If we want to feed the world in the year 2050, we will also have to be able to sustain the world's economies. This cannot be done with small or local organic farms, nor with Monsanto and other GM corporations controlling every aspect of agribusiness. Not only must yields be high, but products must also be sold at a market price that is affordable for the lower income families of the world. Large-scale conventional businesses buy in bulk and sell in bulk and produce lower costs for their products, according to a study by Princeton University in 2003. To sustainably feed the world, produce must be grown productively without major sacrifice of quality, and also must boost the world's economies while feeding it. The only way to achieve these goals is through the means of conventional agriculture, the present and true future of the world's food production. The only way to achieve these goals is through the means of conventional agriculture, the present and true future of the world's food production.
Our first question will be from the transgenic team.
In order to produce such high yields, you rely on high inputs of pesticides, and we all know that pesticides pose extreme risks. In 2002, according to Cornell entomologists, only 0.1% of applied pesticides reach the targeted pests. The other 99.9% of the pesticides are thrown into the environment with no safety barrier. The 99.9% of pesticides that are left to impact the environment do so by seeping into the water table, going through streams and then into oceans, flowing over fields and affecting people that live in the vicinity of those fields. The list goes on and on. Yes, this number might be slightly smaller now with more pesticides that have been targeted to kill one species, but is it really worth the risk of killing off so many other vital species in our world? With this in mind, how can you claim that your way is working and won't be detrimental to the common good of the world?
In response to the idea of pesticides as an important aspect of conventional agriculture, 20 to 40% of the world's potential crop production is lost annually because of the effects of weeds, pests, and diseases. These crop losses would be doubled, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations in 2012, if existing pesticide uses were abandoned. Therefore, it is imperative that we keep using pesticides in order to continue the productivity of conventional farming. However, due to increased target of our pesticides, pesticide use in agriculture is down. It's down by 71 million pounds per year. This is the EPA in 2007 in their pesticides industry sales and usage reports. Due to that number, we are in a decline of pesticide usage, and we are increasing the productivity and target reliability of these pesticides, decreasing the worry of them being transmitted throughout the environment.
Pesticides are not saving lives. They are only saving lives in your sense by saying that millions of people could die from disease and that many crops could be lost if pesticides were not used on them. The reality is that in developed countries, people wouldn't be dying from a virus found in their foods. However, many people would die from cancers they accumulate from being exposed to so much pesticides. According to Catch and Drift in 2003, 90% of pesticides used in California are subject to drift. So is it really worth risking so many lives for simply raising the yield slightly? The answer is no.
Also, I'd like to add that as pesticide use decreases, you say the honeybee crisis, you could say, is increasing in our country. The honeybee deal is very controversial. However, scientists have linked a lot of the decline in honeybees to a pesticide called neonicotinoids. Now, in Europe, they actually banned neonicotinoids for that reasoning, that they didn't want their honeybees to decline. Yet we still use neonicotinoids in our conventional farming today.
Time. Okay. Next question. Due to the overuse of surface water and groundwater in your unsustainable irrigation techniques, there's a huge problem of water scarcity in many places, according to LEAF 2003. Along with scarcity of water, there's also a problem with degraded water being put back into the natural water supply, where the pollutants obviously will disperse. There has been a jump in the numbers of dead oceans, which are due to the runoff of your toxic chemicals into our water supplies. These foreign chemicals are causing destruction to living things that usually thrive in the water. Many sea creatures have been killed in large masses because of the pollution, according to Miller-Spoolman in 2011. Why does your system have such little concern for the natural water cycle that stabilizes water availability?
Well, the National Water Quality Assessment Program is there to provide greater understanding of pollution of the nation's water resources, particularly non-point source contamination of groundwater. These data are critical to decision makers in identifying the agriculture chemicals and geographic areas of greatest concern and risk. This information will assist in developing the most beneficial and cost-effective approaches to preventing water pollution while maintaining agriculture productivity.
Also, we realize that a lot of the pollution is due to fertilizer use in conventional agriculture. And to note on that, less commercial fertilizer is being used now than in 1980. For instance, nitrogen usage peaked in 1994 and is in a steady decline since then, and phosphorus has apex in the 1970s. This is from the Growing the Next Generation report in 2010. Also, the use of fertilizer, which may cause pollution, we realize, creates a lot more productivity in yields. For instance, for each pound of nitrogen that conventional agriculture adds to the soil, 35% of corn can be produced. Given that we're going to have a larger amount of people living in the world in 2050, it is imperative that we have a higher yield.
According to the Green Home in 2012, there are many positive contributions of organic farming that reduces water pollution. We control the animal waste, such as manure, that we use as an alternative to chemical fertilizers, so that it doesn't leak into the water systems and spread ammonia and nitrates. Organic farming also uses healthy soil, which retains much more water and doesn't run off, blocking other plants from sunlight and prohibiting photosynthesis. We don't overuse our fertilizers and only use as much as we need so they don't leak dangerous amounts, which could end up in the water system.
Conventional farming, you talked about fertilizers and how they're important for increasing yields. Well, in 2012, according to Howard Garrett, a soil scientist, when nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are made synthetically and put into synthetic fertilizers, they're essentially floating around too much and are easily leached into the water supply. This means that runoff from synthetic fertilizers will contain large amounts of macronutrients and thus wreak havoc on aquatic ecosystems. This was seen in the Chesapeake Bay since 1960. Algal blooms have devastated the area and the fish market of the bay. What do you have to say to promote your use of synthetic fertilizers?
As the defense to this question is very similar to the defense given to the GMO group, I won't dwell on this too much. However, just as I proved before, yields are so much higher with the use of conventional fertilizers. And as we also said before, the use of fertilizers is decreasing, according to a valid report by Growing the Next Generation in 2010. Given that all the derogatory things about fertilizers are in decline, we are making a steady growth towards a lesser fertilized soil that is the norm for conventional farming. However, that was a very similar question to what GMO or what organic asked us before, so we don't want to dwell on that too much, as we believe that it has already been answered.
Okay.
Also,
Now it's their spot, so yes, they can decline to rebuttal, but you can't skip them. You're declining? Okay. Next question.
So,
The $26 billion California agricultural industry uses 188 million pounds of pesticides each year, according to the article Catching Drift, published in 2011. Yet also according to the article, 264 out of the 905 chemicals used in these pesticides are registered in California as bad actors, which means they cause cancer, nerve damage, etc. Conventional farm employees have asked for protection from direct contact with chemicals from your fertilizers and pesticides because they have been linked to numerous health concerns such as cancer, brain tumors, gene expression changes, unforeseen harm to health, and obstinogenic, which causes pregnant women to give birth to habitually obese children, according to Bittman in 2012. How can you continue to use and implement these deadly chemicals when your employees' health is in danger? Don't you care about them? I mean, they are taking care of your precious crops, after all.
We have realized the effects of what you've been explaining. However, this has created a lot of regulation in the conventional industry. For instance, the EPA has administered 120 health, safety, and environmental tests for pesticide registration. They also monitor toxicity and safety of pesticides and their persistence in the environment. Tests take an average of 9 years, and $200 million is spent for each pesticide to be tested. Therefore, they run a lot of tests to test the validity and safety of these pesticides before use on the market. On average, only 1 in 140,000 pesticide products pass all the tests and are put into use, also from the EPA, meaning the tests are extremely stringent and careful to not overlook any possible dangers. The EPA has also administered laws of Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, Rodenticide Acts, and the Pesticide Registration Improvement Act, meaning there is a steady recovery towards the effects that have been created by faulty pesticides and fertilizers, and we are on the road to recovery for that.
Also, according to CropLife America's 2012 annual report, conventional farming provides a surplus of food created to export internationally, and we can save Americans an average of 41% on grocery bills for fresh fruits and vegetables, and 48% for key grains. This also increases agriculture production, creating over 1.4 million jobs and $33.9 billion in wages. This allows for farmers to engage in conservation tillage, saving 558 million gallons of fuel per year, equaling 22.2 billion pounds of carbon dioxide emissions.
Yes, but how does this help the health of your farmers or the people working on these fields? The EPA estimates that 60% of herbicides, 90% of fungicides, and 30% of insecticides contain carcinogens, according to Organic Food at Princeton, 2013, all of which are used on conventional fields. According to the National Cancer Institute, the laborers who are exposed to these synthetic pesticides are 6 times more likely to get cancer, also according to Organic Food at Princeton, 2013. And according to the World Health Institute, in 2012, 3 million people suffer from severe pesticide poisoning each year. To top it off, Organic Valley 2013 states that every year new research is published demonstrating the toxicity of pesticides to human health and the environment, often at doses previously declared safe by the pesticide industry and the government.
Next question.
You boast about your high yields and how you are feeding the world, yet you are only staying afloat because of government subsidies. According to the Environmental Working Group on Farm Subsidies, in 2012, $15.8 billion were given to farmers, and of that, only $15 million was given to organic farmers. With so much money being given to conventional farmers, many organic farmers must shift over to avoid going bankrupt. Do you support essentially bullying organic farmers into switching to conventional farming by not giving them any handouts to support their cause?
In disagreement with the fact that we are not helping organic farmers at all. There are a few statistics about the subsidy payments the government has given U.S. conventional farms. All the following facts are from the USDA in 2013. In 2000, U.S. government subsidies peaked and have been in steady decline since then. For instance, between 2000 and 2013, there has been a 60% decrease in given subsidies and need for conventional farms to stay afloat. Also, from 1995 to 2012, U.S. conventional farms gave almost $40 billion to the U.S. government for conservation programs that end up helping organic farmers stay afloat. These include wetland and ecosystem restoration, agriculture soil conservation, water conservation, grassland preservation, and wildlife habitat incentive programs. The fact that many U.S. farms that are conventional farms are giving up their subsidies to help the environment shows that we are also a very sustainable group, and we are not purposefully bullying organic or even GMO farms.
Okay, well, your yields are high and you get a lot of funding, and you claim that you're supporting all of these little, like, environmental protection acts, yet those are only fractions of your annual incomes that you get on spending money to help conserve water and whatnot. And your yields are, in turn, relatively the same as transgenic crops. And according to a study at the University of Wisconsin in 2013, transgenic crops may not increase yields, but they reduce loss of yields during bad years, meaning that in a year where there might have been a drought that killed off all of your conventional crops, our transgenic crops could have been sustained because we had made them to be drought resistant.
That wraps up this round. Will the transgenic group please go and give your opening statement?
Good afternoon. I'm here to tell you why transgenic crops, or genetically modified foods, are the most sustainable option to feed the world in the year 2050. According to the United Nations, 1 in 8 of the world's 7 billion people is starving. Every year, 5 million children die of starvation, and in the year 2050, there will be an additional 2.5 million people to feed. Humans have long crossbred crops to improve their taste or hardiness. Genetic engineering is simply allowing us to take genes from one species and put it into another. It's the same result, it's only more targeted. Transgenic crops increase output and can help developing countries produce their own food efficiently in difficult growing conditions. Plants can be modified to need less water or generate higher yields, but fear is holding us back. Vitamin A deficiency causes more than 1 million deaths a year. Something called golden rice has been genetically modified to deliver more vitamin A than spinach, but developing countries are afraid to grow it. Say you want to enjoy a nice apple. Chances are it was grown with pesticides. Pesticides have been proven to alter the hormone systems and nervous systems in the humans and even cause cancer. There is evidence that the honeybee die-off is due to pesticides that make them vulnerable to parasites. Transgenic crops create pesticide resistance at the genetic level, fewer chemicals on our food, and less pesticide runoff in the environment. Nearly all the corn and soybean grown in the United States are genetically modified, yet researchers have found no credible cases of illness due to genetic alterations. My teammates and I firmly believe that transgenic crops, closely inspected and tested, have the best potential to produce what we need: more, cheaper, and better food to feed the Earth's growing population. Thank you.
The first question is asked by Organic.
It is possible to create crops that have medicinal value, for example, golden rice, which has vitamin A infused into it. Yes, these crops could deliver this vital medicine to third world populations, but at the same time, it will be placing food into their already fragile bodies that could and most likely will cause antibiotic resistance. With a handful of deadly diseases already killing millions of people in developing countries, and now this possibility of their bodies possibly becoming immune to the few antibiotics that have been created to protect them from death, what reasoning can doctors possibly have when they state the benefits outweigh the risks? Organic foods, fruits and vegetables contain about 12% more disease-fighting nutrients than non-organic equivalents, according to the WebMD Health News in 2012. Why can't organic food be the solution then instead of oil and rice?
Answering?
Okay, with every new crop, there are going to be people that have resistance or have an allergic reaction to them. For example, when the kiwi was first introduced to America in the 1900s, according to the Food Allergen Association, many people reacted to them in a bad way. However, you didn't see people petitioning grocery stores to ban selling kiwis. According to a U.S. toxicology report in 2012, transgenic crops pose no more of a threat than their substantially equivalent counterpart. Conventional and organic farmers are trying to scare you with these harsh accusations to cover up the fact that their methods use harsh pesticides that are affecting people's lives more than the possibility of transgenic crops hurting people.
According to the Scientific America in 2011, tests were recorded of strawberries, peaches, pears, apples, green leafy vegetables, potatoes, and wheat that showed organic processes have a decreased nitrate content from lack of nitrogen-based fertilizers, increased vitamin C content, and an increased mineral content, including calcium, magnesium, iron, phosphorus, and sodium. Since organic food is nourished naturally in balanced soil, its metabolic integrity of its cellular structures are superior to those GMO foods grow. According to the article, Advantages and Disadvantages of Organic Farming, Good Things, Barriers, and Environmental Effects, published in 2013. As a result, organic foods can store better because they are less susceptible to rapid rotting and mold. So yes, maybe scientists can insert a gene into rice to manipulate it to have a higher vitamin A content. But if that's all it does, it won't stand a chance of surviving in the undeveloped countries where it's headed. And also, you were saying stuff about allergens and how every new crop will produce allergens. I mean, okay, why do we have to, so why do people have to be, adapting to new crops when we can just revert back to our natural systems and have natural foods that people have survived off of for thousands of years without having to, adapt to new allergens? And that's what organic food would bring.
And once again, we don't have a complete long-term list of health risks for our GM crops.
So how do you know, what?
The people who approve them are the people working for these biotech industries.
Is that a
That's fine.
question?
No, it was rhetorical. Okay.
Through cross-pollination and seed travel, it is impossible to completely clean up the contamination of GMO seeds from the environment once they are released and grown. According to a study by the ACIN in 2009, scientists have recognized that the genetic contamination of native seeds is irreparable from harm from GMOs. How do you plan on dealing with this problem, and do you see possible invasive species as an issue?
Cross-pollination is an important issue of transgenics that can be prevented through a number of different techniques. A terminator gene is a gene put in the transgenics to make sure that they can't produce offspring. Many people are against using a terminator gene because it would prevent farmers from replanting their seeds from the previous harvest, forcing them to buy seeds each year from large seed companies, but they're not supposed to reuse their seeds anyway because of the patents they agreed to. A terminator gene in transgenics would be a great way to prevent the spread of transgenics and would prevent cross-pollination with wild plants or nearby farms. According to GMO Compass in 2006, methods like creating transgenics with infertile plants without pollen is one way to stop transgenics from spreading. Another option would be using techniques to make sure the pollen doesn't have transgenic information in it. A third way to prevent the cross-pollination or transgenics from spreading to where we don't want them is to make it so that the seeds of transgenic plants won't sprout. And because of that, seeds that cross-pollinated with transgenics wouldn't be able to grow, thus solving a problem that is very important to organic and conventional farmers who don't want their crops to be contaminated.
Well, according to a study done by Margaret Mellon in 2004, farmers buying conventional seeds of soy, corn, and canola crops are almost positive that their seeds are contaminated by GMOs. Any illusion that GM crops and seeds are being kept separate from conventional and organic crops and seeds is clearly dispelled. And you were saying you have all these different methods to keep the seeds separate, but already you have basically destroyed thousands of innocent American farmers' livelihoods through your contamination.
And between what Lily was saying about hurting organic farmers and introducing Terminator genes to the environment and creating patent law issues, those last two things directly affect smaller farmers, whether or not they're GMO, conventional, or organic, and affects them in poverty and hurting their business as they have to keep buying new seeds that are not sustainable every single year that they have agriculture.
Next question. One point that the GMO group has implied is that farmers are not allowed to save leftover seeds from a harvest to reuse next season. Yet using pesticides in the first place leads to the need to keep purchasing more to replace ones you've run out, so there's more money being spent on pesticides and seeds. How is this a sustainable way to feed our world? Even when organic agriculture is a more sustainable practice, farmers don't receive subsidies from the government to help pay for expensive, which GM crop farmers do, but obviously don't use as strategically as they could. According to Natural News in 2010, organic farming revenues are greater than the industrial revenues due to the absence of pesticides, oils, and fertilizer costs. We can be sustainable and feed the world without government subsidies. Why can't you?
The government has said that patenting isolated strands of DNA shouldn't be legal because they are part of nature, but human-made manipulations of DNA are okay to patent. While patenting natural life would not be good because it would be like companies growing owning living things. Once genes are altered, the transgenic crops aren't part of nature anymore. And in a way, when we're transferring these genes, they're basically, it's not like you're putting a fish into a tomato, you're just taking that gene. So it's similar to old ways of cross-pollinating different plants to make the ideal plant species that you wanted. And according to NPR in 2012, patenting was distinguished by the government, who said it wasn't legal to patent isolated DNA, but patenting human-engineered DNA is fine because it's not something found in nature.
Also, you brought up transgenics preventing farmers from saving their seeds. But according to NPR in 2012, the truth is that most conventional farmers don't save and reuse their seeds anymore anyway. Many people think that before Monsanto got in the way, most farmers saved and reused their seeds, but most farmers in Europe and the US were already buying their seeds from commercial seed companies before Monsanto came along. This is especially true for corn farmers who have been growing commercial hybrids for over 50 years. You can't replant hybrids because the result is a mixture of inferior varieties. Transgenics aren't the reason that less farmers save their seeds. It is because of the commercial seed industry.
Well, first of all, to respond to the putting the fish in the tomato, I think what you're referring to is flavor saver tomatoes, which were introduced into our society and put on our shelves. And then in 2000, in September of 2000, there was a giant recall of flavor saver tomatoes because they were there was a correlation between flavor saver tomatoes and severe allergic reactions. And that is according to Natural News in 2010.
Okay. Well, if the world implemented organic agriculture, there would be more local and sustainable gardens and farms where individual farmers could decide what they wanted to do with the leftover seeds. They would know what decision would affect their garden, the environment, and they would have the best interest in mind for the environment, the economy, and their garden. While we are saving money and greenhouse gases from seed and pesticide transportation, your agriculture will be wasting away government money under the government agricultural policy, bringing in unyielding amounts of seeds and pesticides that the use of could have been prevented. Strategically using the money one has to their advantage and figuring out ways to produce higher yields with what you have is what organic agriculture has accomplished. GMO agriculture has become greedy and is sucking money out of the government just to waste it on things that are detrimental to the environment.
Monsanto, a major GM
Excuse me,
agribusiness.
just so everyone knows, it's the last question of this round.
Okay.
Yeah.
Monsanto, a major GM agribusiness, is famously or infamously in most cases known for their Roundup Ready GM crops. The idea about these crops is that they are genetically resistant to the Roundup Ready herbicide, which will kill, or pesticide, which will kill pests and weeds in the crop area. Between 1996 and 2008, U.S. farmers sprayed an extra 383 million pounds of herbicide on GMOs, according to Jeffrey M. Smith, the director of the Institute for Responsible Technology. The idea of these Roundup Ready crops is to decrease the use of pesticide due to genetic pest resistance in the GM crops themselves. As said on Monsanto's website, a main advantage of GM crops is genetic pest resistance without the use of pesticides quoted. How can you validate this pro if you end up spraying more pesticide than even conventional farming?
No matter what method of farming you use, bugs and plants are going to become resistant to the pesticides and herbicides you're using. Conventional and organic farming both use pesticides. Organic farmers just use natural pesticides, like spinosad. Without pesticides, crops wouldn't produce enough food to feed the huge amounts of people we will have in the year 2050. While transgenic crops do use pesticides, their modifications are meant to lower the use of pesticides. According to Nova PBS in 2013, between 1996 and 2011, BT corn reduced insecticide use in corn production by 45%. Preventing the use of that many pesticides is phenomenal, and with improving technologies, the prevention of pesticide use can only get better. Any effort to use less pesticides should be supported, because other methods of farming use just as much or more pesticides, and pesticides, being very bad for health, are much worse than any possible side effect from transgenic foods.
That is understandable, and the genetic variation and variability in defense against these pesticides is also taken into consideration. However, a report by agronomist Dr. Charles Benbrook from the USDA released data in 2008. He said that herbicide use on genetically modified fields has veered sharply upward, contradicting your statistic there. He said that in crop years 2007 and 2008, there was a 46% increase in herbicide on GM herbicide-tolerant crops. Herbicide use on GM herbicide-tolerant crops rose 31.4% the year after. If pesticides are so degradatory to the environment, as both of us agree, and we are being docked for using them ourselves as conventional farmers, why should you guys use more and publicize the benefits of using less? That's a rhetorical question.
And it's the final one for this round. Thank you. Okay, our final thing will be for each team to give a 1-minute closing statement. And we'll start with transgenic.
Okay. As we have seen today, the only sustainable way to produce food for our growing population is through transgenic crops. Some people fear that people are going to have allergic reactions and health issues from these crops, but as we have shown today, that is simply not true. There have been no studies done showing that transgenic crops are affecting the health of humans. Transgenic crops have the ability to produce higher yields while using less natural resources like water, land, and pesticides. We have been able to produce crops that make their own insecticides, which can't be washed away, contaminating the water we drink. Instead of people spending money arguing against transgenic crops, we should use money to further research on the long-term effects that these crops, which are definitely here to stay, will produce. GMOs have the potential to up crop yields, increase nutritious value, and generally improve farming practices while reducing synthetic chemical use, which is exactly what organic farming and other practices seek to do. And that is why
transgenic crops are the crops of the future.
And we'll now hear from conventional farming.
As you have observed, the conventional practices of farming are the most beneficial to feed the world, given the exponentially growing population. With higher yields, meaning more accessibility to nutrition in developing countries, conventional farming is clearly the only path we should take. Conventional farming is a safe choice, as we are not using biotechnology on our crops like transgenicals. Our pesticides use prevents the spread of disease and pests across the globe. Rapid technological advances have allowed farmers to become more efficient and productive. An MIT report titled Mission 2014, Feeding the World 2010, quotes, "Organic farming is not a short-term solution. It will not yield high amounts of crops immediately, as it takes time for these crops to grow in and create a new system. Switching from more industrial to organic practices is a gradual solution that will take time to administer. We need to realize that the only sustainable option to feed the entire world is conventional agriculture."
And for our final closing statement, we'll be hearing from organic farming.
All right. We need to develop the technique we'll be using in the future quickly and efficiently, since the overall issue of world hunger and malnutrition is already upon us. Since the U.S., up until 50 years ago, relied solely on organic agriculture, according to Christy Wilcox from FoodSmart in 2009, we won't need to waste any more time developing the techniques like we would for GMO and conventional methods, because we already know how to implement these methods correctly and productively. Why can't we just all agree that not wasting time and implementing something that the whole world could sustain that will also keep our environment healthy is the best option? How are the developing countries that GMO and conventional agricultural methods keep bringing up going to achieve these yields that are needed for the population in 2050, going to use large expanses of open space to grow, or the money to purchase the pesticides to keep the fields healthy and thriving? Fortunately, organic methods don't rely on expensive pesticides or subsidies, so with simply a little education, the world could easily and quickly implement these effective techniques and begin to take on the population of what the UN predicts to be 9.6 billion in 2050.